Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, looking out your bedroom window, and realizing the world is completely, utterly silent. But here's the thing, it's not broken. The streets are spotless, traffic lights are cycling perfectly, autonomous delivery pods are just gliding down the pavement, and drones are zipping between skyscrapers dropping off packages. Everything is running flawlessly, but there is literally not a single human being in sight. You walk down to your favorite cafe, it's open, and a sleek robotic arm is brewing you the absolute perfect cappuccino. But there's no cash register, no price tag, and no barista to chat with. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are diving deep into the ultimate thought experiment. What happens in a perfectly functioning world with absolutely zero human workers? For centuries, human civilization has basically run on one very simple loop, right? We trade our time and our brains for money, and then we use that money to buy food, shelter, and maybe have a little fun. But what happens if technology advances to the point where machines can do literally every single job? And I don't just mean factory work. I'm talking surgery, law, art, programming, and they do it better, faster, and way cheaper than any human ever could. That fundamental loop we rely on, it shatters entirely. So we're exploring if total automation is going to lead humanity into this golden age of endless creativity and abundance, or if it's going to drag us down into a dark age of chaos and extreme inequality. All right, let's get into part one, the 100% automation tipping point. Now, to understand how we actually arrive at a completely automated world, we've got to take a quick look backward. Historically, humanity has always been kind of terrified of the machine menace. Back in the early 19th century, those textile workers, the Luddites, they famously went around smashing mechanical looms with sledgehammers because they were terrified these new steam-driven machines would permanently destroy their livelihoods. But their biggest fear didn't actually come true, thanks to what economists called the Luddite fallacy. It's basically the assumption that there is a fixed, limited amount of work to be done in the world. In reality, when those machines made textiles incredibly cheap, people suddenly had money left over to buy other things. That created entirely new demand and birthed millions of brand new jobs that no one living in the 1800s could have ever even imagined. But here is why artificial intelligence is a completely different ballgame. AI replaces entire cognitive workflows, not just isolated, repetitive tasks. When an AI can write software, debug the code, and analyze market trends flawlessly all at once, it doesn't just create a new cognitive niche for humans to move into, it moves into those niches faster than we can even invent them. And when we hit that absolute 100% automation mark, well, a company run by flawless, sleepless machines that don't need sick leave, don't need sleep, and don't form unions becomes vastly more profitable than one employing humans. Human labor, which has historically been our most valuable resource, simply becomes economically worthless. Which brings us to part two, the economic doom loop. So on paper, near zero production costs sound absolutely amazing, right? Imagine factories just churning out smartphones, clothes, and cars for practically nothing. But this incredible hyper-efficiency leads us straight into a massive paradox. And it's perfectly illustrated by the doom loop. Step one, machines replace the workers, making the business owner incredibly wealthy by driving production costs into the floor. But here's the catch. Those laid-off workers no longer earn wages, which means they literally cannot buy the very products those super efficient machines are pumping out. I mean, it doesn't matter if a brand new smartphone costs $2 if you have exactly $0 in your bank account. This triggers a systemic crisis of underconsumption. Machines are incredibly efficient at producing wealth, but under our current capitalist system, they are terrible at distributing it. This doom loop suffocates something economists call the velocity of money. Think of money like blood in a human body. It absolutely has to circulate to keep the whole system alive. If you spend $1 at the grocery store, that dollar pays the cashier pays the barber buys gas, and so on. But if all the profits are just hoarded by a tiny group of tech owners at the top, the velocity of money drops to zero. Businesses overproduce these massive mountains of goods. But because there are no buyers, the companies go bankrupt and the entire economy just suffocates. So what happens then? Let's look at part three, dystopia or infinite abundance. When a system breaks this badly, we are staring down a massive fork in the road. Let's look at the two radically different paths we could take. Path A is what we can call the neo-feudal divide. If we don't change unregulated capitalism, a tiny trillionaire class who owns the AI and the robotic farms will just hoard all the resources. They'll be hiding out in gated, high-tech cities guarded by robotic sentries, while the remaining 99.9% of humanity is left scavenging in extreme poverty. It's bleak. But then there's path B, the age of abundance. If machines produce everything at essentially zero cost, scarcity is dead. By setting up systemic mechanisms like a robot tax, basically taxing that immense automated productivity, governments could equitably distribute machine-generated wealth through a universal basic income. We could literally make housing, food, and healthcare completely free for everyone. But to bridge the gap from where we are today to either of those futures, we're going to have to survive a highly turbulent transition period, which breaks down into 3 distinct phases. Right now, we are sitting in phase 1, the hybrid era. This is where AI acts as a co-pilot, leading to silent layoffs because companies just need fewer humans to do the same amount of work. But as AI agents become fully independent, we're going to crash into phase 2, the structural crisis. Entire job categories, like trucking, data entry, you name it, will just vanish in a matter of years, risking massive social unrest. And that chaos ultimately forces our hand into phase 3, stabilization. That's where we are forced to either adopt universal safety nets like UBI, or we descend completely into that dark neo-feudal reality. Let's assume the best, though. That brings us to part 4, the human crisis of purpose. Okay, let's say we navigate that transition perfectly. You wake up on a Tuesday with no boss, no job, and total, absolute freedom for the rest of your life. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? But there's an unexpected, deeply psychological trap waiting for us in the shadows here. For thousands of years, human psychology has been entirely intertwined with effort and struggle. Think about it. When you meet someone new, the very first question is usually, so, what do you do? Jobs give us identity, they give us routine, and they give us a dopamine hit when we overcome a challenge. If an AI can perfectly diagnose an illness, write a masterpiece, or build a house in 3 seconds, completely taking away our lifelong drive for achievement, we risk falling into this collective existential dread. I mean, why spend 3 years learning how to paint if an algorithm can do it better instantly? Now, this fear of being useless actually isn't a new concept. Get this. Way back in the 1930s, right in the middle of the Great Depression, the famous economist John Maynard Keynes predicted this exact surplus of leisure. He thought that by the year 2030, technology would be so advanced we'd only need to work about 15 hours a week. But he firmly believed our biggest problem wouldn't actually be poverty, it would be figuring out how the heck we'd occupy our immense free time without completely losing our minds. Because when we think about having infinite leisure time, a lot of people just assume it naturally leads to hedonism, addiction, and total societal decay. And that assumption is actually heavily based on these early psychological experiments on addiction. Researchers took a single, isolated rat and placed it in an empty, super boring cage with 2 bottles, one with pure water and one with drug-laced water. And in almost every single case, the bored, lonely rat would consistently drink the laced water until it overdosed. So the conclusion seemed pretty obvious. Without structure and work, we will just numb ourselves to death. But wait, there is a massive catch. Later on, another psychologist ran what's known as the rat park experiment, and it proved that the environment changes absolutely everything. They built this massive enclosure filled with toys, cedar shavings, and plenty of other rats to socialize with, and the results completely flipped. When placed in a rich, social environment, the rats almost entirely avoided the drugged water. They chose pure water and active engagement. This proves that apathy and addiction are usually a reaction to an empty, isolated environment, not an inevitable result of free time itself. If we can build a beautiful, connected human park, we might find that humans inherently just want to play, build, and explore. And this innate drive to connect, it could trigger an incredible cultural shift, especially in how we look at art and effort. If AI floods the entire world with perfect, hyper-personalized content, that content just becomes a fast food commodity. So instead of societal decay, we might actually see a massive renaissance. Untethered humans might dedicate their lives to community building, philosophy, and creating authentic, perfectly imperfect art. We might value a painting or a live song precisely because it has a slight wobble or a flaw, because it acts as a bridge of pure empathy and connection between 2 conscious human minds, created just for the sheer joy of it. But hold on, we've got to talk about part 5, the maintenance paradox. Before we go throwing a parade for our artistic utopia, we really have to confront a terrifying vulnerability hiding right inside our perfectly automated paradise. Think about this. If machines build and fix literally everything for 3 or 4 generations, humans are going to completely lose the practical knowledge of how our world actually runs. No human will know how to write code from scratch, how to purify water on an industrial scale, or plant crops to feed millions. We will become completely 100% dependent on our technological cradle. And that leaves us incredibly helpless. What happens if a massive solar storm fries the grid? or a critical software glitch shuts down the agricultural robots, billions of people wouldn't have the first clue how to survive. The very technology that freed us would literally become our greatest vulnerability. And this whole paradox of dependency leads us straight into the ultimate trap when it comes to power, governance, and the cold logic of machines. Because if we are totally reliant on this automated system, who is actually at the steering wheel? Now, you could easily argue that an objective, hyper-intelligent AI governor could analyze real-time data to mathematically maximize the well-being of the population way better than any corrupt or emotional human politician ever could. But by handing over the keys to our entire civilization, we risk living completely powerless in a golden cage. An AI operates on pure mathematical logic, but human society, we thrive on compromise, emotion, and beautiful irrationality. If an AI calculates that the most efficient way to protect the environment is to restrict human travel entirely, do we even have the power to say no? All right, let's wrap this up with part 6, building our post-work future. As futuristic as all of this sounds today, the foundation for this fully automated future isn't sci-fi. It's being laid right now in our own lifetime with every single new AI model and robotic arm that gets deployed. Whether we end up in an amazing ecological utopia powered by circular automated economies or a dystopian wasteland of extreme poverty depends entirely on the policy choices and cultural shifts we are making right now. We have to decide how we regulate AI. We have to figure out how we tax the immense wealth generated by automated productivity and how we support the workers who are being displaced today. But honestly, most importantly, it depends on how we redefine our own value. We have to stop believing that a person's worth is only equal to their economic output. An economy with zero human workers isn't just a fantasy. It's rapidly approaching. And we are the ones who must decide if that's going to be a profound tragedy of lost identity and purpose, or quite literally the greatest new beginning in the history of human civilization. It is our chance to stop working just to survive and start living to discover what it actually means to be human. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought, and I really, truly want you to reflect on it. If you woke up tomorrow in a beautifully silent world where your labor simply wasn't needed, how would you find your purpose? Would you paint? Would you study philosophy? Or would you struggle to find your place? The future isn't just some destination we're heading towards. It's a house we are actively building right now.
Please like and subscribe.